this is exciting for me this week. We're at, where are we? Toledo, Ohio, at Maumee Bay.
Give or take, something like that.
Something like that. Maumee Bay Conference Center for for Marie and I, the last of our regional conferences this year. We were the Great Lakes region, and it's been an amazing few weeks. And then this last couple of days has been pretty special because I'm getting to hang with some friends, and I ran into none other than Putty Putman while I was here. None other than, and I know most of the folks who know us and support us know who Putty is and how important he's been in our life and our relationship over the years. So it's a treat to be able to get him on here and to talk with you a little bit, man. I miss you.
The feeling's mutual, man. It's mutual.
I mean, it's been a couple of years now that you've been running around and we've been running around, and we just kind of pass in the night once in a while.
Yeah, it's not as frequent anymore.
It's not like it used to be, but I think the last time I actually saw you, we were at your house in Chicago. I visited you.
Yes.
And we had
You're right.
had lunch or something over there.
Right.
So it's been a little while.
It's been a little while.
There's some things that have shifted in your life.
I'm a few thousand miles away from where we met last time. Yeah, that's true.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us what's going on with your family and what y'all are doing.
Totally. So we moved from the Chicago area to Phoenix in late February this year to begin to church plant an experimental church. We've just got some ideas about how we might kind of organize church to flow differently. I suppose maybe you could put it that way. And so I came to the conclusion that church planting is the best way to try that out, and Phoenix seems like the right place to do it. So we've been out there doing church planting, which is messy and glorious and hard, exhilarating, exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
And so, we're experiencing all of that while at the same time kind of experiencing the change in culture and the change in climate, which is pretty significant from Chicago to Phoenix. It's more significant than I thought it would be. And so, we're out there starting that work.
Well, just as somebody who, Marie and I planted a church in a desert at one time, physical, literal desert, not the spiritual, figurative kind. What's your impression of a Phoenix summer at this point?
So it was hot. We did have a record-breaking summer, the hottest one on record. But you know what? I'll tell you what. So yeah, it was warm, but it was not actually as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was thinking like skin melting off your face hot, and it's not that hot. It is hot. But I'll tell you what, this is just because this is the kind of person I am. So there was one week where we were getting news reports that at that point Phoenix was the hottest place on the planet. I don't know if that was true, but this is what I heard, right? I mean, so what I did that week was I searched the weather out. I found the hottest day of that week. I picked the hottest time of the day, and I went out and I did a 3-mile hike when Phoenix was the hottest place on the planet, and that was awesome.
All right, well,
it was awesome.
There's a bit of the physicist working in that particular equation.
You can still do that. Now, would I suggest doing that if your health isn't in the right place? No, don't do that. It's dangerous. But I didn't die. I did 3 miles on the mountains in the desert heat.
That's funny. When Marie and I first moved, we moved to the California desert, and I remember the day we unpacked was 121. And I thought, that's the day you want to be introduced to this
That's
thing.
high.
Right?
It never got to 121 in the summer.
Really?
Phoenix,
we were unpacking a truck as a 121, and I said, I'm looking at this going, Lord, one of us made a mistake. This is not the way this was supposed to be. But yeah, there is a getting used to it, but not the first summer. I never did.
Yeah,
so I'm impressed.
It's
I'm
warm.
Impressed.
It's warm. It's definitely hot. It's definitely hot.
Well, what do you think then is maybe what's one of the things you've learned about maybe yourself that you are, what have you learned in this process?
Good question. Yeah. Well, we're like 6 months in, right? And it's been a weird 6 months because I've also traveled a bit in those 6 months. So I don't know. That actually, I'd have to kind of think about that. Um, I think there's some awesome things in church planting. So like, it's hard, but what you wind up getting is you sort of get. That's like normally life has all these highs and lows, and church planting is the same. It's just the highs are higher and the lows are lower, And so it's just kind of like both extremes just kind of move. I think I'm just learning some things about myself and like resiliency and like digging in to the Lord in a deeper way. I had some stuff this past couple of weeks where I was out doing some travel. I came back and I don't know if you guys would ever feel this, but like it's like you leave, you're doing all this ministry, you come back and you sort of feel all this stuff settle back on you again,
Yeah.
And so I'm coming back in, I'm feeling it settle back on me, and I was just like, man, this is dumb. Like, I'm not doing this like spiritual weight stuff anymore. So I went and I figured out, I was like, okay, I don't know how I got to rearrange my rhythm. So I figured out how I can rearrange my rhythms and so on in terms of time when I'm working and family and all that stuff. And I just decided, I was like, I am going to take however long it takes with the Lord, as many days as it takes with the Lord to like punch through this thing and not have it just kind of sitting on me.
Yeah.
And because I was like, if I'm honest, what else matters here?
Yeah.
Like, what actually else matters? I'm doing a bunch of busy work, but like, if it's not actually filled with like God's whatever. And so I rearranged the schedule. The first day I get up, I journal for an hour, I pray, I wait on the Lord, and I read the book of Acts. Like, the whole book of Acts, and that's my quiet time. It's like 2 hours, 3 hours. But somewhere around chapter 22 in Acts, I finally felt the kind of breakthrough of like, okay, this like weight isn't feeling like it's holding me down anymore. It's like I got above it. And I think that's kind of some of the stuff that I'm learning. It's like, no, like it's really the like where you're at with the Lord. Like that's really what matters. And make the time you got to make and push off whatever you got to push off. Because let's be honest, nothing else matters.
Yeah. Well, the whole pastoring a church. There's that weight. That weight is just part of it,
Yeah.
And so there's how do you deal with that? It's always kind of your question.
Yeah.
One of the people would ask sometimes why and how pastoring a church did I travel as much as I would do, because I was gone quite a lot, and I would. For me, it was that was how I got the weight
How
off
do
for a
you do
while,
this
right?
without travel?
Yeah, it was that's where the weight got dispersed, where I could come back in and be effective when I got back because of that. But you're right, there's a weight to it, and it just brings up a question. I had not really thought through the questions I wanted to talk about with you, but you have talked for a long time. I mean, I've known you a while now, and the idea of doing church different is not a new one. That one you've wrestled with, we've talked about
Years.
for 6 or 7 years, I'm sure.
Right.
And it always intrigues me. All right, that intrigues me. Marie and I have said many times, it's hard to dig through church planting. How do we build a church? How do we do church? How do we lead people, disciple people? How do we fulfill the commission? How do we do that in the structures that inevitably form around this thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need structures.
Right?
Yeah.
How do we do that? And by what part of that is not necessary? What part is optional? Because there are things that we do leading, planting a church that I've always wondered, what would it look like if we didn't do that? And so when you talk about rethinking church,
Sure. Right.
what are some of your baselines? What do you think?
Yeah. So there's a lot of aspects to it. One of the elements that we're thinking about now, and we're really experimenting with a lot right now, is, one of the things that struck me over the last decade of pastoring is I realized, I'm like, okay, one of the things I did not anticipate about this job, which is what I think a lot of people do not anticipate about a pastoral job, is what percentage of the job is basically organizing in some way, shape, or form. And that looks like a lot of different ways. Maybe it's organizing like who's supposed to be doing what. Maybe it's organizing like, how does this kind of ministry work? How does services work? Whatever. I didn't anticipate that, and at first I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I guess I just didn't think about how like the human collaboration bit works and all that kind of stuff. But as I've reflected on it, and also as I've kind of like observed other non-church organizations and institutions in our world, there seems to be this kind of like pivot that's happening in a lot of industries right now where we're moving away from roles, from collaboration being highly organized by the leadership and into shapes that's actually self-organized by the participants. You think about, as a silly example, I suppose, for whatever reason, it's the one that's coming to mind. Like, Wikipedia has made the world's by far largest encyclopedia in so much less time than anything else. Like, if you look, like, Wikipedia has 10 times the articles of Encyclopedia Britannica and has been around for less than a tenth the time. So, way more productive, way more fruitful. Nobody makes a decision which article should we write. That's what's fascinating to me. It's all self-initiated. And then there's these feedback loops that's kind of self-monitored and it's self-corrected, and what winds up happening is whatever people want to make is what winds up happening, and whatever they choose to collaborate on is what winds up getting produced. And somehow that framework can take maybe the world's best encyclopedia. Britannica's been around roughly 250 years. They've made about 100,000 articles. Wikipedia's been around roughly 25 years, a tenth the time. It's got over 6 million articles, and they did it without paying anybody. Yeah. Britannica's been paying people for 250 years and creates 1/60th of the content in 10 times the time. So this idea of self-organizing seems to unleash something in people. And one of the things I just find myself asking is like, there are other functions in pastoral ministry that really matter. There's a spiritual authority function that needs to still exist. But does the way spiritual authority is expressed, does that have to equivocate to how we organize the thing? I don't know that it does. And when I read the scriptures, it looks to me like Paul's talking about something that feels a lot more self-organizing than anything else. And so that's kind of one of the things we're playing with, is like, to what extent can the body self-organize?
That's good.
And then what does that unleash if you can? So that's kind of a big part of the trajectory. But then what you do is you take that framework, that thought, and you still do the same tried and true things that every church does. You still do discipleship, you still do evangelism, you still do, pastoral care, you still do outreach, you still do all those things. It's not that those things change, it's that the shape of how they come about changes. Yeah. That's kind of the nature of the experiment we're trying, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for you and what you're doing. I also like, I've planned it before, so man, I'm glad it's you. But I think it's awesome, and one of those things, Marie and I, we stepped away from our church almost 2 years ago now. Golly, I can't believe it's been that long. Wow. But in large part, I've been just looking at the situation coming out of 2020 and all that we've seen over the last couple of years. It became very clear that the church has to shift, right? It already did, right? It already has. It was going to, whether we were on board with it or not. So watching the shift, you can't help but think there's some things that have to start doing, looking, being different. If this thing is going on, right, going to the next generation, the next place it's supposed to go, and so. You know, I told somebody not long ago, said I'm pretty good at the way it used to work. Right.
Yeah.
But but I love that folks like you and of course Bo and Rachel and Jackson and others have this attitude of let's explore this thing.
Yeah.
Let's experiment. Let's do
Try
some
something.
things. And so I just kind of want to say that all of that. That's the kingdom in progress, right? That's the way it works. It's the idea is not doing everything exactly the same way for eternity, right? It's moving along with what is God doing today, and I do think that this experimentation in just not the content. But in the methodologies is a absolute God thing. And just love seeing it, love seeing what you're doing. So,
thanks, man.
How's the family?
Thanks. We're getting settled in there, you know.
Yeah.
It's a big transition, so we're wrapping our head around a lot of layers, building new support networks and all that stuff. But it's it's going.
Well, like I said, we'll come out and see you.
Good.
I look forward to
I
that.
eagerly look forward to that
Hey
day.
man, I appreciate it. I'm so grateful to have this time with you.
Yeah.
And,
It's a joy to be with you
this.
anytime.
It was good to be here, and to hear you last night. I have to say again, that's my favorite thing you do. Right? That message and that activation is my favorite thing you do. I've stolen it blindly. I
Perfect.
Use it all over.
Please do.
So,
Please do.
So it's fun. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys watching, and we will keep you informed on what's going on, and just appreciate every one of you. Bye bye.